Kumlen and Ablach Gemara, we are up to Daf Pei Daled Amid Aleph Tzem Gedalia. We are up to the Mishnah in the middle of the page. Now, the premise of this Mishnah is that for a Kesuvos, the only properties that are encumbered are, assets, are land properties. But metaltlin, portable items, are not meshubed to a Kesuvos. So if a person dies and he leaves behind an inheritance, you say him any properties that he has, that's the Kesuvos or the lender can collect from there. But if it's metaltlin, the children are not obligated to pay off their father's debts. So the Mishnah. Misha Mace, if somebody dies. So there are three people now who have a claim. We're just beginning the Mishnah in Pei Daled Amid Aleph. So, and the premise of this Mishnah is that metaltlin are not indebted to a loan or to a Kesuvos. And in fact, this is Mishnah here, the Ran says, is the source for that halacha. So somebody died, and he had left a wife who has a claim on the assets, and a lender and Yoshin and heirs. But the children did not inherit it yet, or they did inherit it in theory, but it's not there. They didn't acquire it yet because it's sitting in somebody else's house. Either it was deposited somewhere, or somebody else owed the father money. So the children therefore don't have access to it yet. So the question is, and there's not enough to cover all three bills. Who has priority here? Tarfin says that you give it to the one who's weakest amongst them. Now, what exactly does it mean, the weakest amongst them? We'll see later. More two Amoraim have an argument, and one of them says the one who has the weakest case. So we'll give it to that person. In other words, whichever let's say between the lenders or the Kesuvos, whichever is a later date, is the weaker one. Okay. We'll explain. Rabbi Kiva says, "Ein merachmin badin." We don't show compassion in din. You just do whatever the legal right is, and that's it. Rabbi Kiva holds that you don't pay off the balchay, the lender. You don't pay off the Kesuvos. It just goes directly to the heirs. They're the ones who are entitled to it, even though the others are going to forego that whatever their debts are. Too bad. You give it to the heirs. And the proof is that if the other two want to collect from the Yisraelim, they can never collect unless they make a vow that they never got paid yet. But the Yoshin automatically inherit, which proves that the natural rights to these belongings are belong to the Yisraelim, not to the others. Case number one. Case number two. He had paid a solution with the cargo. Let's say left behind harvested, let's say grains, or they removed they picked all the fruits. Whoever gets the first, again, is the rightful heir, which is again the opinion of Rav Tarfon that the children don't own it yet, and therefore whoever the first is first. So whatever the woman, let's say the Kesuvos only $200, and there was $300 worth of harvest there, a crop. The lender owns all $200 and he has more there. What do you do with the leftovers? Rav Tarfon says, the leftovers, it's one person grabbed it, but there's still other debts, let's say the other chayiv or the Kesuvos, plus the children, the heirs. Who gets it? Whoever the weakest amongst them. Again, we'll see later what it means. And Rabbi Kiva says, just give it outright to the Yoshim. Why does Rabbi Kiva merely argue in the excess? What about the initial crop that was detached? It should be the same argument. According to Kiva, the Kesuvos or the balchay has no right to collect it because it belongs to the Yoshin. The Gemara is going to ask. The same logic. Says the Gemara, why do you have to give us two examples? It was not in the home of the deceased, either because he deposited somewhere or he lent it somewhere. It's the same idea. So what is the two examples for? Says we need them both. We only told us to look in the case of that he lent it to somebody else and somebody owes him money. So in other words, the money is no longer in existence. I would say Tarfon therefore says, since the money is no longer in existence, the heirs don't have anything. So whoever gets the first gets the first, or we give it to the weakest one. Should the milvul it's meant to be spent, and therefore it's as if there's no connection yet to the heirs. All it is a right to collect, but not the thing itself. Not the money itself. So therefore, Tarfon says, look, it's not around, and nobody has any rights to it yet, so therefore we can give it to somebody else. But because the metal, whatever the father left behind is around, and wherever by because if somebody's monitoring for you, it's as if it's still in your possession, because they're monitoring on your behalf. So maybe he agreed to Rabbi Kiva that the children already inherited, and it's too late. So if you only know the case of Pekod, I would say, well, how come Rabbi Kiva only here? Rabbi Kiva argues that look, the Yoshin already inherited, because whatever it is, it belongs to them. In the case of a loan, where the person, the borrower, had every right to use the money, so the money is no longer in existence. Maybe agrees to have and the children don't have anything yet. And therefore, we need both cases. Okay, my Lakash, only the weaker one. Who's the weaker one? The one who has the weakest proof. Whoever is the latest contract is the one who you have to wait for the other person first to collect whatever they're owed, and if there's any money left over, the second date is the one who collects. So therefore, they're the weakest, because even though you have a right to go to the properties and collect from the properties, it might be insufficient properties to cover everybody's loans. So who gets first? Whoever has the earlier date on their contract have first right of collecting from these lekuchas. So the koisha sheberaya is the one who has a later date on the contract. Now, says no, you know what the weaker one is? A woman is much weaker. Why? Because she is not the one who's not aggressive. She's not going to go searching for all the properties of that the deceased left behind and find them and then take the person to court or something. Therefore, she is the weakest. The Baal Chayiv is going to run around and do his home. And Mishum China, we want to make it pleasant. We want to make it easy for her. Rashi understands that we want that she should be interested in getting married. A few days ago, we learned that Shema Shata realizes the problem that women were no longer getting married because they were not being taken care of properly, and therefore that's why we put in that in the Kesuvos everything is encumbered to the Kesuvos, because a woman just said, "Why should get married?" and he'll treat us like whatever. So the same thing over here. We want women to be interested in getting married. We want that the men should find charm in the eyes of the women. So therefore, we made it easy for them and say, "No, there's only you can go to the ears before anybody else." Traditionally, exactly the opposite. We want the women to be able to collect the Kesuvos so they have more money, and women for more money find it easier to find the shidduch. So so that men will be interested in them. In fact, tonight is an argument tonight. One who has the weakest proof, who kosher, and and he's the one who collects first. And Rabbi Lozo says, no, it's Kesuvos Isha because of China. We want them to find grace in each other's eyes. Okay, if you left behind cut off fruit, and Rabbi Kiva doesn't step in and argue with Rabbi Tarfon whether the heirs have a right to it or not. It's only the excess. What about the initial amount, the principal amount? Still, according to Rabbi Kiva, it belongs to the heirs. Then the Kesuvos cannot collect from there, and the Chayiv cannot collect from there. So why does it only argue with Rabbi Tarfon in case number 2, in the case of excess? They go in first, and they take whatever their amount is, and then the excess, what happens to it? Even the initial amount, they had no right to take it because Rabbi Kiva belongs to the ocean. Rabbi Kiva, it's all the ocean. You're right. The idea, the Omer of Tarfon, Tarfon said Moiser leftover. He also said Moiser leftover. Only because it's responding to Tarfon, but really he argues on both. So it says the Gemara, so Rabbi Akiva, so what do you tell me, Rabbi Akiva? Belongs to the heirs, and even though that there is a debt out there to the father, or even though there's a debt out there to the mother, to the Kesuvos, nevertheless, their tfisa, their grabbing it doesn't help because it belongs to the Yoshim, and that's end of story. Is that how it is? Rabbi says, Rabbi Nachman, in the name of Nachman, who there is an instance where, even according to Rabbi Akiva, their grabbing will help. If they grabbed let's say the debt, they grabbed the money for the debt, the outstanding debt, while the father was still alive, or she grabbed the money for the Kesuvos while the father was still alive, so then the Yoshim at that time had no rights yet because they weren't alive. Then they have a right; they can keep it. Then the tfisa helps. Says Reb Tarfon, according to Reb Tarfon, that says that even after the father died, if they grabbed it, they get it, and not the Yoshi, because the things were not sitting in the house of the Yoshi. Or Reb Tarfon, the manchi heicha, according to Reb Tarfon, that Reb Tarfon says that the Yoshim don't own it straight away. Where were these products lying? That therefore we say it's if it's lying in the house of the deceased, the Yoshim get it instantly. So it's lying somewhere where the Yoshim have no access to. Where exactly does it have to be to say the Yoshim have no access? According to Tarfon, if the woman grabs it, she can keep it. So there's an argument to Rabbi Shmuel and Shlach Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Shmuel, they both say, it's lying out in the public space, And in public space, you don't really make a kinyan or anything else. You can't even make a mashiach there, pull it yourself because it belongs to everybody. And that's why the Yoshim didn't inherit it yet. Abel Besimta, but if it's on a side street that's next to the adjacent to the Shusarabi, but it's still on a side street, and that people just go over there if they want to be able to have a conversation and not be bumped around or something. So it's sort of semi-private, not really private, semi-private. Over there, if you make a mashiach, you can pull it, it'll be a valid kinyan. Over there, if the father dies, and that's where the belongings are, when he died, the Yoshim inherited straight away. However, Rabbi Yochanan, they both say, I feel a bit simta. They argue. They said that even in a simta, if it's lying there, not in a private place, the Yoshim did not inherit it, and therefore you can grab it, according to Rab Tarfon. So the Gemara dining Rab Tarfon. Once happened to a few judges who ruled like Rab Tarfon. V'hader Reish Lakish leuvde minayu. Reish Lakish went ahead and reversed their psak. Now we don't generally overturn. We don't have an appeals court that overturns unless it was like a Torah b'dvar Mishnah. If they've made an outright error, it's a clear Mishnah that everybody should have been aware of. Or today, a clear Amoraim, the Gemara ahead will say even famous Amoraim say something and you weren't aware. It's just a mistake, and your psak therefore is not a valid psak. And sometimes the dayanim have to reimburse the person, depends if they cause any damage or not. So the Shlokish went and decided to overturn their psak as if to say that they clearly made a mistake because they ruled like Rab Tarfon. And whatever they grabbed, it was a valid grabbing. So the Kesuvos she can keep, or the Chayiv, the Baal Chayiv can keep. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, what? This is like Torah Vamisha. This is such a clear psak. He treated like as if the Rabbi Akiva's opinion, as if this is the words of the Torah. Like the halacha and Moshe Sinai. No, he's trying to saying, okay, I understand. We should rule like Rabbi Akiva and we should say he belongs to the earth. But if the other people grabbed it, the fact is that it is a true debt. Why would take it away from them? So Gemara says, so what's the argument of Rabbi Yochanan Shlokish? Why does Shlokish say that no, that even b'di'evet the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva and we take it back from them? And Rabbi Yochanan says no. What's the argument? We have three different ways of understanding. Lema, we can say b'hakam ilfugah. This is the crux of their argument. Mar Sava Torah b'dvar Shlokish holds Torah b'dvar Mishnah Chayzer. Somebody makes a mistake in something which is clear cut in the Mishnah, and for example, the halacha always is like Rabbi Akiva against his friends, and even though it's not really clearly in the Mishnah. But that's since Amoraim rule, that's how it always is, and everybody agrees that as if it's clearly written in the Mishnah, and therefore this psak is a meaningless psak. Oh, and that's how Shlokish. Rabbi opinion may be that Torah Mishnah, maybe they hold that even if you made a mistake on an open Mishnah, if that's for the ruling of a besan, then it remains. So no. Kuli Alma, everyone agrees that Torah b'dvar Mishnah. That if you made a mistake, something which is clearly explicit in the Mishnah, then the psak is not a valid psak. Over here, this is the argument. One of them holds halacha Rabbi Akiva mechavei roi v'loi merabah. Tarfon was the Rebbe Rabbi Akiva. When do we say that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva? When he argues with a colleague, but when he argues with his teacher, the halacha is not necessarily like Rabbi Akiva, and therefore it's not a Torah b'dvar Mishnah. So even if you tell me the halacha like Rabbi Akiva, it's not clear cut, and therefore the psak remains, and that's the view of Rabbi Yochanan. But Marsa Reish Lakish holds halacha afilu merabah, even against Rabbi Tarfon's clear cut halacha like Rabbi Akiva. And that's Yibai said another way of looking at it. The Kuliyama, everyone says halacha ki Rabbi Akiva v'chavere. Everyone says the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva from his friend Leimer Rabbi. When do we rule like Rabbi Akiva only from his friend, but not against his teacher? And they're arguing on whether Rabbi Tarfon became eventually his friend or he still remained his teacher. With this argument, one of them hold Rabbi Tarfon was always his teacher to the very end. He was his colleague. He might have started out as a teacher, but later on became his colleague. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva, the halacha like Rabbi Akiva, therefore we overturn the psak. But if you hold it that it is his Rebbe, then we don't overturn the psak. Even though you just said the halacha like Rabbi Akiva, but it's not so clear cut. Yibayim said a fourth way of learning. Kuliyama, everyone agreed Rabbi Akiva was Chaveda, was his friend. Rabbi Tarfon was Rabbi Akiva's friend. The argument of Rabbi Yochanan is as follows. Mar Savar halacha itmar. One of them says that it's a clear-cut halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, and therefore the besan who ruled not like Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Tarfon, got it wrong, and they have to unravel their psak. Mar Savar, another one says matin itmar. We say generally that we're inclined to follow Rabbi Akiva, but it's not dead set that that's how it has to be. And therefore, definitely, if a besan ruled like Rabbi Tarfon, you don't overturn the psak of a besan. The Gemara tells the number is it's Krevid Rabbi Yechanan. So the halacha in the Gemara here is like Rabbi Akiva, that if the ksuba, the woman ksuba, if even though the person died, and portable items which are not mishubed, we're talking about here portable items, metaltlin, which is not encumbered to the ksuba or not encumbered to the debt. The children don't have to pay the debt of their father with the if it's if all they possess now is metaltlin portable items. On the other hand, there is a debt there, so if they grab the hold of it, in the court of Tarfon, as long as the Yisraelim did not inherit it yet, because it's lying out in Shusarabim or out in the Simta, the Tfisa is valid. Court of Akiva, you can't. It belongs to the Yisraelim straight away, and therefore you cannot, even if it's somewhere in the Shusarabim or somewhere else, and therefore you cannot grab. The only time grabbing will avail you is if you grabbed it while the person who actually owed you the debt or owed you the was still alive. So Gemara tells an incident, Kreva Rabbi Yechon, the relative Rabbi Yechon, and we had a number of cases where Rabbi Yechon tried to help his relatives out and later regretted it. Kreva Rabbi Yechon, the relative Rabbi Yechon, Tofa is Para. The asthma, they grabbed a hold of a cow of Yisraeli Mesimta, was out in the Simta, and they grabbed a hold of it because they they felt like Rabbi Yechon and Shlakish, Rabbi Yechon himself paskin that it's from a Simta. According to Rav Tarfon, if they grabbed it, it does not belong to the same yet. So if they grabbed it, it's a valid grabbing. So they did that. Also, the Kamen Rabbi Yechon had the interpret Rabbi Yechon, Amalu Shapet too. He said, yeah, good on you that you grabbed it. Also, the Kamen Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Amalu Zilu Ahada. He ruled that your grabbing is useless because the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, you cannot grab it, it belongs to the Yisraelim and give it back to them. Also, the Kamen Rabbi Yechon went back to the cousin Rabbi Yechon and said, hey, what's going on here? Amalu Rabbi Yechon said to them, what should I do? What should I do that my opponent and my colleague argues with me and he doesn't agree with me? We had this at the end of the fourth Pedic as well. And we even had the stronger words where they told the Shlakish, how could you pass on this? But here they went to Rabbi Yechon. He said, what should I do? My brother-in-law opposes me. But in previous, at the end of the fourth Pedic, when they went to the Shlakish and told the Shlakish, Rabbi Yechon disagrees with you, he told them, either you listen to what I say or I will pull Rabbi Yechon out of the ears. In other words, I don't care what he said. This is the rule. He's very strong-minded. And he said, this is how it is. Something about further. Another incident. There was a shepherd of Yisraelim, the Tofsa Terminay, and they again Balchayv. A Balchayv came along, and a cow is a portable item, so therefore the person died, the Balchayv cannot really collect his debt from the cow, but he grabbed a hold of it. But here the story is a little bit different. The Balchayv said, I grabbed it when the person was still alive, and according to Rabbi Akiva as well, it's a valid grabbing, because the Yisraelim I don't have access yet. But the shepherd said, no, you grabbed it after our father died, or this person died, and therefore you had no right to grab it, because Allah is like Rabbi Akiva. Also, he said to the shepherd, the top said, do you have witnesses at all that this lender grabbed the cow from you? No. In that case, if this guy is a liar, he could have just as well said, it's my cow, and I bought it from you a long time ago. You could have said, I bought it from you a long time ago. You could have lied, and then you would have no case, because it's by him, and he has a chazakah. But why is it by him? Probably he's telling the truth. You would have to prove you have to prove that he didn't buy from you. How will you prove that he didn't buy the cow from you? So now that he says, therefore he can say also, I bought it from the line. Says the Gemara, didn't the Shlokis say that animals that constantly wander about, the fact that it's sitting by me proves nothing? If I say I bought it, I have to prove that I bought it, because just because it's sitting in my yard doesn't prove anything. My barn for anything, because animals wander about. That's talking about small sheep and goats, but a cow, which is basically watched and supervised by a shepherd, they don't just wander about. So if it's sitting in the house of this Baal Chayv, and if he would have said, I bought it, we would have to believe him, and you, the shepherd, would have to prove otherwise. Sitting more further. What happened was that the family of the Nasi were very powerful and authoritarian. This is in Babel, that they were given powers are invested in them by the government. So what happened was that the Veda said, tough was Amasa the Yasim simpler. They grabbed a hold of a maid of the Yisraeli. Well, it was still in the side street. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it still does not belong to the Yisraelim yet, and it's portable. If you hold that avodim are like metaltalin, and therefore they grabbed it. There's a machlek you haven't borrowed of Kamagid Beis and in other places whether avodim are like karka or avodim are like metaltalin. So they grabbed a hold of this Ebed. They were sitting the three Dayonim, Rabbi Vu, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Papa, and Yossi, Rabbi Abba Gabai, Rabbi Abba was sitting right next to them. Malahu Shapit too, and they said to the Beit Nasiya, "Wow, you guys did the right thing. Legally, you were right." Oh, Rabbi Abba said, "The Beit Nasiya, just because they're from the house of the Nasi, you're trying to you're trying to ingratiate yourself with them, and you're telling them things which are not true." You're basically ruling like Rav Tarfon that the grabbing is valid. But we had a case with other Dayanim ruled like Rav Tarfon, but had the Shlokish and the Shlokish overturned it, and Rabbi Yochanan didn't fight the Shlokish. No, he conceded that the halacha is going to keep it completely, and they had no right to grab this maid, so they have to pay it back. Says the Gemara. Sorry, lost a place. Yemar bar Choshu. Havimasi Bezuzei. Yemar Choshu once lent money by Hugav. Yemar Choshu once lent money to a person, and Shachir, that person died. So now Yemar bar Choshu wanted to collect his debt. The Shavik out of it behind a boat, and a boat is considered metaltal. So he couldn't really go to the assignment and collect it, but it was out there in the waters. He said to his shliach, and we'll discuss in a minute whether the waters are considered like a Rishus Rabim or is it like a simta. He said to the shluchim, Zil Tov Sanele, go grab it. In other words, we'll follow Rav Tarfon, who says, I want that if it's out in the middle of nowhere, the Yisraelim don't own it yet, and if you grabbed it, it's a valid grabbing. Now, this story is a little bit hard to understand, but this is what happened. Ozali went, Tovsa, and the shliach grabbed it on behalf of the Yema Bar Choshu. Now, there's a rule we'll have in Bamitzia. There in Daf Yibei, there's a rule called Hatoifes in other places. Hatoifes lebal choy b'mokum shechav lached. In other words, if this person owes 5 people money, and one of the lenders grabs the money, so be it, because he is entitled to that money, even though as a result of that, the other 4 will get paid. It's not their problem. But if somebody goes and grabs the money from one of them, he's not a lender himself, but he's grabbing on behalf of one of the lenders, and generally we have a rule: if I pick up something and I have you in mind, it's to your benefit. It says you're automatically kited. So if a third party goes and grabs the money from the borrower on behalf of his friend, one of the lenders, we say if you grab for a balchoy, where you're hurting other people, like Connie, you can't do that because you're harming others. And why not? So according to the Pnei Yeshua, you're like a shliach at Varavera. And if you're shliach at Varavera, brings it down. If you're a shliach at Varavera, you cannot be a shliach at Varavera. He's no longer my shliach. So therefore, another of the lenders can come over to this third party and just take the money from him because you have no right. You're sitting with somebody else's money. You collected for one of the lenders, but it doesn't belong to the lender. You have no right to collect for him, and therefore I'm taking it. And there's a machlekes Rashi and Tosfos there whether if one of the lenders actually appointed a shliach, what would happen? In other words, is zechus and shlichus one and the same? If I do something without your knowledge to benefit you, and I'm acquiring on your behalf, and you're kindness, that's called zechus. Is zechus and shlichus one and the same? But zechus is totally different. It's from a possible and on a condition of a base, and has nothing to do with shlichus. But here the Gemara puts the two together, and this is one of Tosfos' proofs that zechus and shlichus are the same. So what happened was the lender sent the shliach and said, "Go ahead and get the money for me." So what happened was that he got the money on behalf of the Yema Bar Choshu, and as he was coming home, he met Rav Papa, Rav Hunda B'rei Rav Shua. Rav Papa and Rav Shua were friends. They were students of Rava, and the Bible a little bit as well. And they constantly, fighting with each other in halacha, and most times in halacha Rav Shua. They constantly argue in halacha. Amrulay, they said to him, and turned out to be they were also lenders of this guy. So they said to him, you just grabbed the boat on behalf. They also went to seize the boat, and he said, you just grabbed. Interesting, they went together because I was still seeing the story. They were fighting with each other. why they came together, or they just happened to bump into each other. And they said, you grabbed on behalf of a lender, you had no right to, because you were hurting others. The Gemara has a discussion, if you pick up an object that was lost, and I pick it up and I think, I don't want it for myself, I'll pick it up for somebody else. So the chayr, it's a wonderful thing, it's a schus. But at the same time, you're hurting everybody else, because the rest of the world now can no longer pick it up and acquire it because you already took over ownership. So isn't that a case of teifus leval chayv? And how come the law is according to some hamagbi etzil chaveda kana chaveda? And we answer that it's different, and the reason why it's different is because migay de zachil nafshi zachinam lachaved, which means the person who picked it up, he could have kept it for himself, and instead decided to give somebody else. And if I would have kept it for myself, nobody could take it away from me. So in fact, we learn from there, if one of the lenders decided to take the money but not keep it for themselves, but keep it for another lender, then nobody can take it away from him, because migay de zachil nafshi zachinam lachaved, he could have been acquired for himself, he could acquire for somebody else. But here they went over to him and said, look, you're a third party, you had no right to it. What right do you have to take the boat? And you cannot go ahead and grab something for one balchay while you're hurting others. Okay, so you have to leave it go. You have to leave the boat go. Tafsu ina. These two now jumped in the boat, or they both jumped into the water to grab a hold of the boat. Rav Papa was sat inside the boat, and he was using the oars, and he was trying to row. Rav Huna, to show ownership. Rav Huna was holding the rope to tie down to the docks over there. And in fact, we have very similar Gemara in Shnaim by a horse. You have a manig and a reich. The manig is the one who's pulling the horse by the reins, and somebody sitting on top. It's a very similar case. And here they're having an argument. So one of them said, Papa said, I own the boat because I was rowing. I own the boat because I was pulling the rope. It's just amazing. They both were lenders. They knew why they were there. And instead of saying, you know what, let's divide at least 50-50, they both ran, and each one decided to be kind of totally for themselves. A little bit hard to understand. These are Amoraim. Anyway, Paga Bahura Pinchas Barami. The Pinchas Barami happened to bump into them. Amalahu, he said to them, Rav Shmuel Damitavai, both Rav and Shmuel both said, Bahush et Tziborim and Achim Rabim, even though Rabbi Yechon and Reish Lakish say that even if it's in a side street, you can grab it, but Rav Shmuel said you can only grab it if it's a Shus Rabim. And since we're in a bubble, maybe we should follow Rav Shmuel. Why are you? So both of you have no rights. It belongs to the heirs. You cannot pull away this boat, and it's a talton, and it's not a comer to your debt. Amar lahu, he said to them, we took it from the middle of the river, and the middle of the river is like a Shus Rabim. It's like a public space, and therefore, according to everybody, the Yoshin didn't inherit it, and therefore we can grab it. Also, the Kamen Rava, now these were students of Rava, they went for Rava, and they had to argue who owns the boat. Amalu, he called them Kaki Chivre, my white geese. White because they were both gray already. So, and they're still students of Rava. Rava must be very old. They were both gray. Kaki and Chivre, geese, because geese sometimes are an example for very smart. Some say because they were smart animals, so therefore you're smart white people. You're going ahead and you're stripping off somebody's clothes. In other words, you're taking people's possessions away. Nachman said, well, who should tough some chaim? That law is like Rabbi Akiva. And according to Rabbi Akiva, grabbing once the person died doesn't help. The only time that you can grab this is if the father was still alive. And since he's dead, doesn't matter what you grab. Doesn't matter who sat and rode and who pulled the thing. Neither of you are kind of. So therefore, we see the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, that metalton are not encumbered to b'chayv. So therefore, all of this doesn't apply today because the Goinim came along and said that metalton are you can collect the ksula from this. So therefore, you can grab. You could definitely grab. It's like karka. So therefore, you don't have to grab. You can go to the Yisayimim and outright collect the ksula. Okay, with a shvur, we can outright collect the shvur. So we'll stop here, and tomorrow we'll go.